We started this research with high hopes, energised by the dedication of young activists fighting for real change in the planetary crisis. The momentum of the 2019 climate movements, widespread media coverage, and the rise of new grassroots initiatives all pointed to a future shaped by informed and passionate voices. Hope is high for what's ahead, or is it? This documentary explores the realities of student activism today, delving into both its triumphs and its struggles. We spoke with students, ex-students and professors at Queen's University Belfast to uncover their perspective on advocacy, change-making and the challenges they face. What we discovered is an exhausted generation, one that feels let down by institutions, governments and most painfully, the older generations who refuse to listen. Through interviews, research and real-world experiences, we examine how student activism has evolved, the impact of social media in mobilising movements, and the resilience of young people fighting for a livable future. While frustrations grow, determination remains, and in this documentary, social links expose the interconnected nature of this crisis, and we uncover whether that determination from few is enough to truly shift the course of our climate crisis.
What is climate change? Climate change is the global warming of the Earth's atmosphere, 1.5 Celsius above pre-industrial levels. It is the overconsumption and net greenhouse gas emissions which have led to human self-destruction. As scientists cry out for evidence to be taken seriously, with high increase in CO2 emissions over the last 30 years. Climate change has evidently affected our forests and sea levels, causing catastrophic weather, dire food insecurity, and overall risk to human health and any life on this planet as we know it. The less discussed side of climate change is the social and political aspects. Climate change is not just the destruction of nature, but has many intersectional effects on issues that persist in society today, such as class, gender, race, and economy. Climate change accentuates the evident privilege some have over others. Climate change is not an equally felt issue, nor does everyone in society contribute to it equally. As seen in the graphs above, the wealthy often contribute the most to climate change, highlighting the issue with capitalism and oppression, as it is the poor who suffer the most from climate change, although they contribute the least. One may ask how this has happened. We have a long history of not only exploiting the Earth's natural resources, but each other as well. The systematic structure of colonialism still persists and may best explain the decision-making and social norms of governments and institutions. It is why there has been little of the action needed to address the aggressive progression of the climate crisis. Real change will need total reform of economic and social institutions, on a domestic and international level. State and corporate decision-making shows blatant disregard for their heavy contribution to fossil fuels and its real-life impact on the lives of not-so-privileged.
Okay, so what do you think then, with that in mind, your future will look like in 20, 30 years?
But I don't think it's going to change. It's just going to carry on
Yeah.
as it is. Maybe reduced a bit in some countries, but I don't think it's going to change too much.
Addressing climate change calls for radical or not-so-radical social movements. This logical fight against the injustice that persists, not just as an individual but as a community. We must listen to the widespread outcries for climate change justice. We must start imagining a world where we combat climate change. To achieve this, we must tackle the conformity of social norms directly affecting society's complacency to climate change. What better way to do this than to start with the root of people's consciousness and ideological thinking in education, art, and literature?
Now, getting into student activism. It refers to the efforts of students to advocate for social, political, economic, or environmental change. It involves organized actions such as protests, campaigns, and public engagement, often aimed at challenging injustices and influencing policy within the educational institutions and broader society. Student activism plays a key role in shaping democratic discourse and advancing democratic participation. However, activism isn't just about speaking up, it's about who gets to speak.
I think it's whoever has the courage to stand up for the convictions. There is a problem with the white middle class male voice. It's not representative of everybody. So I think having a variety of voices, working class women, ethnic minorities, because everybody's going to be affected by this. So we do need to have all voices represented in what it is that we're collectively trying to figure out. I actually think in terms of media attention, what if an old male, pale and stale professor was to go on a climate strike? Would that have the same impact as a young Greta Thunberg? We don't know. But But it does seem to me that we shouldn't put too much pressure on young people. It is the sad reality, and why your generation should be absolutely so angry about having been left this problem that you didn't create. So
Student activism has evolved over decades, from fighting racism and war in the 60s and 70s to pushing for democracy and human rights in the 80s and 90s, to using digital tools today to lead global movements on climate, justice, and equality. Across generations, students have been a driving force for change. Even now, students are stepping up in powerful ways. One activist recalls how it all began for them.
I've always been really interested in the environment specifically, but I suppose I started sort of going to protests with friends and family whenever I was a teenager, and it's always I've always felt it sort of aligned a lot of the sort of social justice issues I was sort of concerned about or frustrated about, sort of really aligned with my sort of moral compass that I had to get up and do something about it. So whether it was LGBT plus rights, and before we got gay marriage, for example, something like that. It just felt like an injustice, and I thought I can sit here and complain about it, or I can get out and do something about it. But nature specifically has always been something I've been very passionate about.
Despite its impact, it isn't something most students take part in.
Have any of you ever taken part in any form of student activism?
No, but I feel like that's because I don't feel like I have the platform to like begin any activism myself.
Can't remember it, but I remember seeing it and thinking perhaps it was a bit too radical for me to jump in.
Then I'd be open to do it, but I haven't really seen it advertised, so I haven't seen it. So,
despite these efforts, climate activism faces increasing suppression globally. According to research undertaken by the University of Bristol, peaceful protesters have been handed lengthy prison sentences, while police have employed tactics such as stop and search, arrests, and intimidation. They also found that in some countries, activists have faced enforced disappearances and even murder. These repressive measures not only threaten individual activists, but they create a climate of fear that discourages students and others from participating in environmental movements. This suppression of climate activism poses a serious challenge to the fight against the climate crisis. Queen's has a strong history of student-led activism. From protests of 2,000 students against RUC violence in the late 60s, to more recent examples of calls for university condemnation of Israel's actions in Palestine, and protests for language equality on campus for Irish-speaking students. In terms of climate activism, one of the major examples of student protest on campus occurred in 2015. The student group Fossil Free QUB staged a sit-in occupation of the university's administration building to protest fossil fuel investments. Led by Queen's Student Union President Sean Ferran, the demonstration resulted in QUB committing to divesting from fossil fuels. Today's student activism and work continues through societies such as the Belfast Hills Society and Friends of the Earth, which campaign for a greener and more sustainable campus.
Beyond the headlines and confrontations, climate action also begins with everyday choices. So we asked students, how much do they know about their own impact?
Think about your own carbon footprint personally outside of
No, not
No?
particularly.
Okay.
You kind of realize there's only so much you can do personally,
Yeah.
and I think puts the blame on the people like us who realistically can't do that much about it and feel like I can't do too much. So I don't. That's why I don't particularly like. It doesn't bother me too much my own carbon footprint.
But awareness is just one part of the story. We also wanted to know, how do students actually feel about climate activism itself?
What do you think about student activism regarding climate change?
I think it's great. I don't know if it's fed into our government. Probably they're just a little bit out of touch, but also I don't think climate is a priority for many governments due to capitalism and the world we live in.
Yeah, I think it's definitely relevant in our society, the concern for climate change, but I think genuinely no one is at a healthy financial stability to make to be able to continuously make a conscious effort, because it is set at an unattainable price point to completely revamp your life to be completely eco-friendly and sustainable.
Throughout history, students have stood at the heart of change, challenging injustice, demanding a better future, and refusing to stay silent. Today, that legacy lives on in both bold activism and quiet choices. Whether you are marching in the streets or rethinking your daily habits, your voice matters. And as one quote reminds us,
You are the people you've been waiting for.
so maybe the real question is, what will you do next?